What do you think about the Hunter Biden laptop story?
I think it's garbage.
You think it's garbage?
I think the Russian intelligence sold it to Rudy Giuliani. Anything Rudy Giuliani touches is garbage.
But they have authenticated that it was his laptop. I think the FBI has authenticated that it was his laptop.
I'd like to see that and
see if you can
see
find
if they
that.
could.
I want to say that
anyone in the FBI absolutely says that that was his laptop, and the chain of custody. Like it may have been his laptop, but the Russian intelligence is really good at taking things that are genuine and then putting false information in it. And
but see, you seem so skeptical with that, and yet the Russia-Trump connection was pretty. You were pretty hard passed on that.
Yeah, well, and the other reason is why I don't really give a shit about Hunter Biden's laptop. There's nothing in that says that Joe Biden was.
Well, there are some emails in there that allude to Hunter Biden kicking money up to Joe Biden for connecting, Chinese business tycoons with him. Yeah. And they have email correspondence showing that. How authentic that is, I'm not sure. It is.
It claimed. Who's it?
The New York Post. Well, that's where I was going with this. Is the
conservative newspaper owned by
the New York Post?
Yeah, owned by what's his name from Fox News. The New York Post is owned by the same guy who owns Fox News.
See if you can find that next. Wait, I wanted to read that. Can you go back for a sec? It claimed that a laptop abandoned in a repair shop by Hunter Biden. Oh yeah, this is an old one. Introducing a Ukrainian energy tycoon. There's that, but there's also the Chinese connection.
And there's no record on Mr. Biden's schedule that such a meeting ever took place.
Where did you see that at?
It claimed that a laptop abandoned in a repair shop by Hunter Biden.
Oh yes, there's no record on Mr. Biden's schedule. Okay, well, how hard is it to, remove something from a schedule? But the thing is, this story was suppressed in the beginning.
It wasn't suppressed. I mean, from my perspective, it was ignored by media who were like, "This has alarm bells written all over it."
No, it was actively suppressed. I believe it.
Well, how do you actively suppress it?
I believe the FBI said we're not investigating this. See if you can find that.
But
the FBI told, I don't know if it was intelligence analysts, and I feel like I'm getting a little conspiratorial here right now, which is not where I was trying to go with that. You seem very skeptical on this, and yet very gung ho when it is left to right. Like if it involves Trump.
What I'm thinking is that, I think that people on the left can be just as. Russian intelligence is a real thing. And their efforts to throw this country into disarray and cause all kinds of issues has been well documented and well tracked. When Donald Trump got elected, we had this whole fallout happen where all the people in the intelligence services and the FBI were suddenly deep state, and they're all out to get Trump, and all the appearances of Donald Trump doing something wrong were part of this deep state. So I am skeptical of that whole line of argument because I've researched it, and none of that is true. I mean, it's basically there is no deep state. There were people who were trying to serve there and do their jobs. Some of them expressed political opinions in text between their friends, but it was never this plot to overthrow Donald Trump like they make it out to be. And so you see the people on Fox News and the friends of Donald Trump arguing this point over and over and over again, and it's total garbage. And then you have, like I said, though, I don't think Donald Trump was involved in a conspiracy with Russia. I think it should have been investigated, and it was, and that's as far as it should have gone.
But you don't think that the Hunter Biden laptop should be investigated?
No, I don't, because that whole thing, that whole scheme is something that U.S. intelligence has seen before, where the Russian government can take something, even if it was originally Hunter Biden's laptop, if they had it, they can do things to it to make it look like it's really got some really salacious information in it, and no one would be able to tell the difference.
But don't we have to investigate to come to that conclusion? How do you just draw that just by the connection to Russia? I mean,
but you're thinking that they said that they would never investigate, that it had anything to do with Russia?
They tried very hard to shut it down. Twitter censored it. Facebook pulled it.
Because it was misinformation.
But nobody investigated. How can you write it off as misinformation if nobody looks into it?
There were articles out when it first came out, and I can't point you to who the people were, but there was...
the New York Post is the one that broke the story.
The New York Post, which is owned by the Murdoch family.
Yeah, I do get the connection, but don't you think that it at least warrants, just like the Russia investigation warranted an investigation, don't you think this warrants one? How can we just write it off? Maybe it is a Russian thing. Maybe it's not. I think the Russians would be just as inclined to pull down Hunter Biden as they are to uplift Trump. So what if the information is legit and maybe it did come from some foreign actor looking to hurt the presidency? Yeah. Isn't that still valid? If bad information comes from a bad source, but it's true, Do we discredit that, the reality of what that holds?
I guess that, if this laptop hadn't been found by Giuliani through some partisan hack who owned this store, who like calls up Giuliani and says, "Hey, I got Hunter Biden's laptop," all of which is extremely questionable. Like, to the point where it beggars belief to think that. And this is the same group of people, meanwhile, who stole Biden's daughter's diary. Right, and tried to make that into hay right before the election with Project Veritas, and now Project Veritas is in the process of like getting sued and trials and public legal maneuvers because they stole her diary when she was in drug recovery and tried to make that into a campaign issue. And there's this long-running issue to try and discredit Hunter Biden because he's a drug addict. That's the only reason why this is happening. I've seen no fundamentally real proof that he's done anything crooked that should get him investigated. And if there is real evidence, then of course they should investigate it. I'm not saying they shouldn't. But this particular thing with the laptop smacks of a desperate campaign ploy by Giuliani and all of his connections to Russian intelligence, which are documented. I don't know how you can trust any of that. It just smacks of garbage.
Write it off without any real investigation happening.
Well, I wouldn't say don't investigate it. I'm not saying don't look into it to see that it's, but from where I'm sitting, and I don't have the wherewithal to, investigate it but from where I'm sitting, to me, one is obviously, you have one where it's the son of a presidential candidate who maybe,
but
the other one is whether or not he's working actively with the foreign government to get power.
Yes, but there are,
so it's two different things.
Just like there were connections with Russia and Trump, Hunter Biden is basically, he has a joint bank account with his dad. He also was being financed by some China business tycoon, had like a stipend of an insane amount of money monthly, was given a car by
$80,000 a month, and Trump couldn't say it often enough.
To say that he's not connected to these powerful people because of his relation to his dad,
I'm not saying that.
But that does open the door then that there is collusion, just like Trump has connection. Not collusion, my bad. But there is a connection there that I would imagine provides enough legitimacy where we should look into it. Just to say definitively,
I'm not saying it shouldn't have been looked into. I'm not saying that. But I am saying from my perspective where I sit,
you don't find legitimacy.
I would approach it with extreme prejudice, because the facts surrounding it. Don't you think
that's a bias going straight into it?
No, I don't. Look at what happened throughout the 2015-2016 campaign. Look at the relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. Look at all of the things that have been said. Look at Donald Trump in Helsinki basically bending over and taking the ass from Putin for this country and saying, hey, look, I know what my intelligence says, but, I don't know why we shouldn't believe Vladimir Putin. He's done things that are just shockingly bizarre for someone who is supposed to be on an equal footing with this guy. You talk about, who's got dirt on whoever. Donald Trump has acted like a patsy for Vladimir Putin from the very beginning and even up until this day. And suddenly Russian intelligence is sort of involved in producing this laptop that has incriminating evidence kind of about Hunter Biden, but it's all really kind of confusing and no one can really give a clear answer on how it implicates Joe Biden, and it just really obscures things. To me, it seems like a obvious intelligence operation. And sure, we should look into it to make sure that there's nothing in there that's, going to say that Hunter Biden is going to sell off American secrets. But then you don't have Joe Biden giving security clearances to his son, like you had Donald Trump giving security clearances to his son-in-law, who was pegged as a intelligence risk by all of the intelligence agencies. So this guy that everyone's jumping up and down about, Hunter Biden, isn't even a part of the administration. In no way has anything to do with the governing of this country. Whereas Donald Trump had all these crooks right in bed with him in the White House residence. So it's a matter of scale. It's okay, so this guy was a drug addict. Maybe, I doubt it, but maybe he did some things that were kind of untoward with money. And Joe Biden is not rich. He files his taxes. You can look at his tax returns. You can see the house he lives in. He is not Donald Trump rich. He is not raking in the millions. It's just not happening. So how can you even begin to equate the two? It's Donald Trump owes basically all of his business success of the last 15 years to Russia. They've said as much right before the campaign. And then he runs, and then he's soft on Russia, and then tries to like bend over backward to give Russia everything it wants, tries to dismantle NATO. I mean, like all of that. And Joe Biden's son, who was a drug addict, had a laptop. They don't equal the same thing. They're just not on the same scale.
I'm not trying to equate the two. I'm just saying a problem is a problem. And if until it's definitive that it's not a problem, it should be warranted as such. It should be investigated. I'm not going to make a judgment call on which one is worse or which one.
I will.
Yeah. But, the sliding scale, it doesn't matter. It's just if there is a potential breach or a potential risk or potential evidence.
But how does any of this represent a potential risk to Biden in office right now? How does it change anything that Biden is doing?
Well, because if you can buy your way to Biden and buy your way to getting access to him, anyone with money.
Did?
That's what they're alleging in the emails, is that Hunter Biden's ties to these Chinese tycoons and the Ukrainian situation, he's selling basically access to the president. For a kickback and giving some of that money to the president, which would be a conflict of interest.
Okay, selling access when he was vice president, right?
Which doesn't diminish. That's still a problem.
It's still a problem. Okay, even if had it happened, which I don't believe it did, even had it happened, how does that change things now? What is he doing now?
But that's
what is Hunter Biden doing?
That's ignoring a problem. That's like saying, oh, well, this guy killed this person 5 years ago. Why do we care about it now?
Okay, but it's hardly killing somebody.
No, but if you're selling access as the vice president, we're going to assume that you're just okay now that you're president and you're on the right,
but then you have this thing where, I mean,
this fly's killing me over here.
I know, it loves you. the tit for tat, and I kind of hate this, but it works for the right, so I'll go ahead and use it. Like, the Trump administration had the Trump Hotel right down the street from the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people and foreign leaders were coming in there and staying there on purpose to make sure that the money,
a ridiculous amount of money.
And so that money would go into Trump's pocket so that when they went to go confab with Trump, he would know that they were giving him some money, and so that would affect his potential, they wanted that to be known, and that was part of the whole grab bag thing. How is that any different than this?
See, this is where I'm going with that. I view both of those as the same thing. Just like I think that should be investigated, I think the Hunter Biden.
It's not being investigated.
But I don't have control over that. But I'm saying they both should. The impression I'm getting.
You're spending a lot of time arguing right now that this Hunter laptop thing should be totally investigated.
Yes,
because and just one of the scandals of the Trump administration.
Because the impression that I get from a lot of people, and I'm going to make a judgment call that you're a little left leaning.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't say far left, but a little left leaning.
I absolutely am, and that's what I said before I started. That I have a hard time being saying I'm impartial.
Yeah, most people from the left, and it happens on the right the other way too, they kind of cherry pick, and so things that align with them against the thing. So the Russia investigation against Trump falls right in line, so they're gung-ho for it. But investigating Hillary's emails, investigating the Hunter Biden laptop, these other things, they just immediately brush them off. And I don't know enough about either of those. I don't even know enough about this to really provide an accurate sentiment about it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, just like I am with the Russia investigation. But there's that disconnect. And it's the same for the people on the right. They don't think the Russia collusion is warranted at all.
So you know that the Russian... Okay, you say that the Hillary emails thing was not investigated, right?
I don't know if it was.
No, it was. And in fact, that's the reason why Donald Trump won the election. Because 2 weeks before Donald Trump got elected, there was a press release put out by James Comey from the FBI saying that we are investigating Anthony Weiner's laptop having to do with emails from Hillary Clinton and her secret server. And that happened 2 weeks before the election, and that gave Donald Trump a bunch of stuff to talk about. And this changed the tide of the election, and a lot of people think that Jim Comey got Donald Trump elected. So that was investigated. And he announced 2 weeks before the election, which is against FBI policy, that he was continuing to investigate it. So, I mean, if we're going to talk about who's who's in the bag for who, the FBI basically damaged the Hillary Clinton campaign 2 weeks before the election, even though they have a policy of not announcing anything investigative within 60 days of an election day. So that was investigated. We can talk about Benghazi, okay, another Hillary Clinton scandal. Did she do something wrong? I don't know enough about it to know. But I do know that she spent 12 hours under questioning in a House committee where she answered all of their questions and never complained and did everything she could to tell them what they wanted to know. That kind of like accountability never occurred within the Trump White House. Like they wouldn't even come to committee hearings. They wouldn't submit to questioning. So it's like you have a pattern of behavior and accountability that all administrations up until the Trump administration followed. Like they had accountability where they would have to go before the House Oversight Committee, and they had to play respectfully with the other branches of government. All that stopped without Trump. So let's be clear. I'm not saying that Republicans as a whole are bad or that their scandals aren't any more real than Democrats or anything like that. I'm saying that the Trump administration, singularly, whether they were right or left, has been the most crooked organization or crooked administration this country has ever seen times 10. Makes like Nixon look like a fairy godmother, and that has to be recognized. And this is where we get to the like why I have a hard time being impartial. It's not a left or right thing. It's like we have this example of fascist ideology that suddenly inserted itself into the American system, and we're all gonna like pussyfoot around it and not call it what it is, and then play like tit for tat. Well, Hunter Biden's laptop equals Russia investigation. No, it doesn't. It does not. One involves like basically screwing around with an American election and possibly causing a person to get elected who wasn't rightfully chosen, and the other is a son who may have pushed up kickbacks to his father years and years ago. They're not the same thing. They're just not. I don't see them that way. And so you basically have one outstanding president who, I mean, not outstanding like outstanding, but standing out for their crookedness, the Trump administration. That's the cancer. Whether or not the following administration is Republican or Democrat, I will judge them on the basis of how they interact with people and the government. And I don't judge them based on their political philosophy. I judge them based on their behavior. And the Trump administration proved itself to be the most scandalous administration to ever exist in the human system or American system. I mean, there was like 20 scandals. Like how many cabinet, I mean, every cabinet official basically had like some major, I mean, Interior, EPA. They were all just, I mean, constantly doing shenanigans. And it's like people want to break it down to, well, if you're going to be left, if you're going to go after the left, you got to go after the right. I don't see it that way. It's like if someone is bad, a bad actor, then you need to focus on the bad actor. And do I see Biden as the same kind of bad actor as Donald Trump? No. And most of the country agrees with me.
But then we go back to that sliding scale.
It's not a sliding scale. The scope of the crimes is so much broader with Donald Trump. And not because he's a Republican.
You could say that. But isn't being a bad actor, period, full stop, isn't that enough to warrant whatever investigation?
Yeah,
it's
but
not
I
about,
don't think,
okay, you're doing
but you
things
have
that
yet
are worse.
But none of these things that you've talked about remotely equal any of the things that Donald Trump did.
But here, we're going back to the equality thing. If you have a murderer who kills 3 people and one who kills 5, they're both still murderers. Yes, this one did more bad things, but
if you're asking, do I think they should both be held accountable? Yes. But do I think that they are in anywhere near the same league?
Yeah, I understand that.
I don't.